What does woke mean? We don't even know. Of course we know what it means. And guess what? It ain't that hard. You're going to learn what it means today, because right now what's happening when people saying, I don't even know what it means. Then they say, actually, you don't even know what it means. You're using a word and all it is some sort of dog whistle, or it's a red herring, or you're using it incorrectly. Some say, no, you just stolen the word. Other people say, you say it, but what you really mean is that you're just being a racist. There's so many things going on with the woke stuff, and it matters because, as you know, I got a book coming out this year called Wimpy, Weak, and Woke, and woke is something I know a little something about. I'm going to give you the simplest definition you've ever heard. You're going to end this podcast and you're going to be like, oh my gosh, John, that was so simple. I'm going to say, I know. It's a simple definition. It's life that's complex. But once you kind of understand the worldviews, it ain't no sweat. It's nothing, baby. You're going to love it. You're going to end this podcast. You're going to understand what being woke means. You're going to understand why different people have different definitions of what being woke means. And you are going to be able to answer confidently when somebody says, you don't even know what woke is, you're just saying that, you're going to say, actually, I do. And then you're going to say, how could you possibly know that? And you say, because I watched the best podcast God ever created called Cooper Stuff. Cooper Stuff! Hey everybody, welcome back to Cooper Stuff. I hope you're doing okay. Guess what? I'm filming this on a Friday. By the time it comes out on Monday, I will be done with the tour. We have 3 shows left. Having a great time. I'm sorry this is the most boring background ever, so you're just going to have to deal with it. Look at my beard because it looks nice. All right? Sorry it's ugly, but you got to listen. This is going to be a good episode. I think it's going to help some people because I think a lot of people get very confused about this. There's something that's going on right now. People are very confused about what woke is. All right. So we're going to explain it. But here's the thing. If you like it, then you might need to send it to some people because you probably know a lot of people who are getting very confused about this. Is this just culture war? Are we just arguing about another thing or another word? Is that all it is? It's not just that. It's a lot deeper than that. So you may want to send this episode to somebody. All right. So if you dig it, do me a favor. Go on, give a positive response. Give me 5 stars on Apple Podcasts. 4 is okay. If you don't like the podcast, don't rate it. Just stop listening. JK, don't stop listening. You're going to like it. It's going to be a good one. Send it to somebody. Here's what's going on. As you know, of course, we're at a war with words. We all know that. There's language games happening, language battles. But they're not just for funsies, all right? It's not just that people want to argue about what words mean or they make up new definition just because, hey, that sounds like a great way to spend an afternoon. You change the definition of words or the way that they are used in order to gain power. It's not just that you just change it. Now we're seeing this same thing. I mean, there's a whole host of terms that people use differently. Systemic racism. Even if you talk about BLM, all right, because sometimes you're talking about Black Lives Matter, the movement. Sometimes you're talking about the organization. Sometimes you're talking about the specific 3 women who started BLM. Everybody has different ideas of what these things mean. Structural racism, white privilege, critical race theory, Christian nationalism. That's also actually another good one. There are lots of those things. Certainly, a lot of people mean different things about that. Now, some people could just say, we can't ever talk about anything. That's the only reason we don't agree. That's not actually true. That's not what's going on. There's simple definitions. I'm going to give them to you. There's simple ways to see it ain't actually that hard. What's hard is life. Life is very difficult right now because we are living in different realities. We have a different, it's not just worldview. Sometimes you use the word worldview and sometimes people go, oh, it sounds too Christian. Let's don't use the word worldview. Let's use the word reality or view of the world. We have a different view of what the world is, what the world should be, the society we want to create, the structures of society is very, very different. And so, yes, these words are being used in different ways, but sometimes it's just because people are completely in one side of that, one worldview or one structure of reality, if you want to call it that, not a structure of reality, but of a perception of reality, and somebody else is in the other one. And so in order to try to reach people. Yes, we should be winsome. Yes, we should have conversations. We don't want to always assume that because somebody uses the term, they're in some other camp and now we're going to villainize them. But it is okay to assume the way that they say things. You can ask a few questions and then go, oh, okay, they're in that worldview while I'm in this worldview. Look, a great example is this. If you look at the French Revolution, all right, you're talking about, I mean, the slaughter of people in the streets, like stained the ground red, okay? During the time of the French Revolution, there was actually two names for this incredible, like, slaughtering of people. One, a lot of us know. They call it the Reign of Terror. A lot of people are familiar with that. Some other people don't know that there was another name for that, which was called the Republic of Virtue. Virtue. The Republic of Virtue or Reign of Terror. Those kind of sound like they'd be different things, don't they? But they're the same thing depending on which structure of society that you believe in. You understand what I'm saying? It's not any different than the way that we see abortion. If you believe that life begins in the womb, do you believe that God creates life uniquely? That has happened at conception. That is a brand new life. And so because that human being is in the image of God, has individual rights, you may not end that life. But the other side says, no, this is reproductive justice. This is healthcare justice. It's not that different. I mean, healthcare justice or murder, those are two different things, just like Reign of Terror, Republic of Virtue. Well, they would say, no, it is virtuous because we believe that all those, terrible landowners, all the aristocrats, all those people that have owned all that land, and all those priests, all those religious people that were keeping us in bondage and whatever, they need to go. And we don't just need to have a restructuring of society. We need to kill all of those people. And they did that. And so they killed priests and religious people and all sorts of stuff. And they ended up actually putting a statue to the goddess of reason, just to worship reason as a deity. Well, that's actually something that happened. That's a republic of virtue. If the most virtuous thing you can imagine is that particular worldview. Everybody else says kind of a reign of terror, like the guillotine, beheaded a lot of people up in here. That's what's going on. We can argue about the definition of woke all you want. Now, the reason Cooper stuff got into what we're doing now, what I'm doing now, I don't want to say who this is because it might start a war, and I don't want to start a war because I love this person. So I'm not trying to be rude, but I'm just being honest with you. This started because in 2014, a Christian musician got super duper woke. And he was even saying he was woke. And he was saying these things that I'm like, I don't understand what these things mean. That doesn't align with what I think the Bible's saying. But he's acting like that I don't align with what the Bible's saying because he's doing the real work of the gospel of the kingdom. I didn't even know what woke meant. He was the one saying it. So I had to start doing a lot of studying. And I came to the conclusions, which I'll share today. And I said, oh yeah, that's not actually good. And so now here we are all these years later, and I've seen this same Christian artist say, it's funny, people accuse me of being woke. And I'm like, dude, nobody uses that word anymore. That's what's going on right now. And it is a very cynical game going on where the people that were pushing the woke movement had not only embraced the woke movement, were preaching the woke movement, were bragging about the woke movement. And it took people like me and probably like a lot of you and churches and conservatives 3 years to catch on to what was going on. We were like, we just don't understand this language. Once we finally understood it, we were like, oh, I don't like that. That's not good. So we began to use the word woke as a pejorative, as a negative thing, saying, yeah, you guys are woke. We know what woke means now. We know what you believe now. We don't like what you believe, and we're against it. We're not woke. And so then the cynical thing that happened, this is always what happens with progressives, is now the other side is going, you don't even know what woke means in the first place. It's the same thing to do with critical race theory. We say critical race theory isn't good. It took us like 10 years to figure out what it was. We're 10 years behind on it after they've been pushing it the whole time. Then we say, hey, this is not good. Critical race theory isn't good. And then they go, we're not teaching critical race theory. We don't even know what it is. And then we say, yeah, we do. It's this and this. And they go, you don't even know what it is. You're just using it because you're a bigot of some sort. You're using it as a political weapon. We don't even teach that. And then their next step is, if you don't teach critical race theory, then you're a bigot. So it's like they can't decide what they want. Now, they're going to say that I'm not being fair. I'm going to read a whole bunch of literature today. I'm going to read their point of view. I'm going to give my point of view. You can decide for yourself. I have a feeling you're going to feel me on this. I'm going to try to be fair, but that's what's going on. So they did the same thing with critical race theory. They did the same thing with white privilege, whiteness, systemic racism. They did the same thing with all of it. And in the end, we need to say, yes, we do know what you're talking about. And with this Christian artist, I'm saying, now he scoffs at people that say woke. He's just like, we don't even use that word. It's not even like a thing. I don't even know what you mean when you say it. But I got to be honest with you. This Christian artist is I'm just using him as a microcosm of the entire woke movement, okay? But it's true, I think, for him as well. Here's the thing. He has not changed what he believed from 7 years ago. He was preaching wokeness then. That was even his words, get woke, stay woke. He was preaching it then. He believed it then. We see what he believed then. We understand what he believed then. He still believes the same things now. He just doesn't call it woke. You don't magically change something because you start calling it a different thing. It's the same thing. We know what you meant then. We disagree with it. You still mean that now. We still disagree with it. So yes, we're labeling you woke because that's what you are. You used to say it, and we do know what you're talking about. So let's jump in to the drama of what's going on. Now, this is the reason I'm doing this podcast. So there's a woman called Bethany Mandel. Bethany Mandel has written a book called Stolen Youth, and she co-wrote it, and I can't remember the other person's name that wrote it. Now, I've not read the book, but I know about it. Probably going to be something that I really like. That's the feeling I have. I've heard some interviews, and I say, yeah, I agree with this. All right, absolutely. It's anti-woke. It's anti-critical race theory being taught in schools, things like that, okay. Stuff that Cooper stuff agrees with. Haven't read the book, just want you to know that. So Bethany Mandel went on a show. She was asked by journalist Brianna Joy Gray to define what the word woke meant. So the best thing to do is for me to show you this clip, and let me just explain what's happening. She's there talking about the book Stolen Youth. And she says, well, we got to watch out for this woke stuff and blah, blah, blah. And so the person interviewing her, which is more of a person on the left, says, wait a minute. Can you just define woke? You said woke a few times. Can you define it so we know what we're talking about? Now this, I'm just going to be honest. I'm trying to be fair. I don't know Bethany Mandel. I had not heard of her before this book. I am not being rude to her because chances are I agree with her. But she totally choked. I'm just going to be honest. She choked. Now I will say this. It's really the pressure when you go on. I've been on Fox News. I've been interviewed a couple times. You guys have no idea what the pressure is like. I'm not complaining. I don't get nervous for interviews, and my heart is racing because you've only got 30, not even 30 seconds. You got 15 seconds to say something good enough that they're not going to cut you off or that you make sense. It's very difficult to say something that makes sense in 15 seconds. As you know, if you're talking to somebody, what you really want is, if you're doing an interview, you're listening to a podcast, you'd really like it if they could say it succinctly. It's very difficult. And I think that Bethany she just blanked out and all of a sudden couldn't remember what woke is, even though she just wrote a whole book on it. It is not a good look. And I will just say it gave the other side, the opposition, it gave them a lot of ammunition, and kind of rightly so. And I'm not being rude to this person because I think I'm on her side. But it gave them a lot of ammunition because their point is that all you conservatives, all you Christians, all you people keep talking about wokeism, but you don't even know what it means. All you're trying to do is vie for political power. It's a red herring. And then they have somebody on that's written a book about it. And they say, well, then what is it? And they can't answer. So let's do a favor. Watch this clip.
And probably fewer of them consider themselves to be woke. And so, when we talk about traditional...
What does that mean to you? Would you mind defining woke? Because it's come up a couple times and I just want to make sure we're on the same page.
So, woke is sort of the idea that This is going to be one of those moments that goes viral. I mean, woke is something that's very hard to define, and we've spent an entire chapter defining it. It is sort of the understanding that we need to totally reimagine and redo society in order to create hierarchies of oppression. It's hard to explain in a 15-second soundbite.
Yeah, look,
that was a little difficult. Now, she did get towards the end towards giving a definition that's actually good. It's a pretty good definition. It's just that I think what's going probably in her head, she's blanking out. It is hard to describe, but there are much easier ways to describe it. But you do have to understand the worldviews. So let me do this. Let me tell you what my quick definition is. Granted, different people are going to understand what these terms mean. So yes, the difficulty is understanding the worldviews, but there's easy answers. So somebody said, John, what do you even mean when you even say woke? What is that? This is what woke is. Woke is PC culture turbocharged. You know, PC culture is political correctness. It is political correctness turbocharged to like the infinity degree, all right, through a lens of Neo-Marxism. That's what it is. Now, you might say that's not simple at all. It is simple if you just think about it. If you wonder why all of a sudden you're not allowed to say certain things on social media, hate speech isn't free speech, why conservative people or Christian people get shouted down, why you are not allowed to say that a man cannot get pregnant. If you wonder why, I think it's just the newest hockey team is the Blackhawks, I think it is. The Blackhawks are getting slammed because they're opting out of wearing pride jerseys. I mean, what does pride have to do with hockey, you guys? You're playing a sport. You're playing by the way, you're playing a sport that mainly like dudes like conservative, like it's a similar fan base to NASCAR, okay? What is pride in celebrating LGBTQ plus? What does it have to do with hockey? And if you're a hockey player, why should you be forced to celebrate someone's sexuality? What if you're like, I kind of just, I'd like to leave sex out of my sports, if you don't mind. All of this comes into this thing of uber political correctness gone absolutely haywire. If you wonder, for instance, all of the progressive left says that America is totally evil. We're oppressive, colonialistic. We go to all these other countries and we're just spreading colonialism and bigotry because we try to make all these other countries live by our values. That's what colonialism is. It's the worst thing in the whole world. But the same progressives today, right now, as you're watching Cooper stuff, will, at our U.S. Embassy, they'll raise pride flags, or LGBT flag, transgender flags in Uganda, meaning in countries in Africa or other countries around the world in the Middle East, at the U.S. Embassy where they should have an American flag because it's the U.S. Embassy and that stands for America. They should have an American flag. They go, you know what? No, we're going to raise the pride flag. We're going to raise the transgender flag in a country that is not progressive in the same way that America is, that does not believe in LGBT rights in the way that America does. Excuse me. Some of these countries, these kind of lifestyles are still actually illegal, all right? So what are we doing? That is a form of colonialism, is it not? We're going to their country. We're pushing our views. Well, that's okay. That kind of colonialism is good, but this other kind is bad. And you go, but that doesn't really make any sense. Of course it makes sense if you think of PC culture turbocharged through Neo-Marxism. I'll explain the Neo-Marxism in a second so you understand what I mean by that. All it is political culture gone massively steroided out. Now, in the definition that Bethany Mandel said at the very end of that clip you just saw, I can't remember what she said. She said something about an inversion of like hierarchies of social groups. I can't remember what she said. That is the Neo-Marxism aspect, okay? But everything that happens in society right now, every single thing that happens is through the lens of this sort of hyper PC culture that we're talking about. Some people, and we're going to get to this in a little while, they say woke. They say, no, all that woke ever means is being aware of discrimination. All right, this is where we get into the worldview. Yeah, that's sort of like saying all that the French revolutionaries wanted was virtue. Yes, within their worldview. Yet the same people that got the guillotine out and started, throttling everybody, right? All they cared about was virtue. Okay, yes, within your specific worldview and structure of the world. So you can say, well, all we care about is discrimination. Well, that's easy enough. Well, you don't care about discrimination? And you'd say, of course I care about discrimination. Say, good, then hockey players need to wear the pride flag. Good, then the American embassy needs to be raising the transgender flag in Uganda, or Uganda, however you say, excuse me. Good, then just like President Biden said last week about what's happening down in Florida, so basically they're putting legislation forward saying that so minors, right, under 18, kids should not be able to begin transgender surgeries and things like that. Hormone treatments, puberty blockers. Can't begin that. You can't begin these surgeries. The President of the United States comes in his words, he says, as my mom says, it's close to sinful. Well, it depends on which worldview you're looking at. Well, you don't care about discrimination? Well, see, you can't say, yes, I care about discrimination, because it depends on what you're talking about. PC culture on steroids through the lens of Neo-Marxism. The reason all this stuff doesn't make sense. We're going to get to this in a second. The progressives are always playing a really cynical game about this woke stuff. Because they will say the definition, and then when we say, hey, that's what woke is, then they say that we don't know what their definition is. Then they jump into the other worldview. It would be sort of like saying, for the French Revolutionary analogy, people who want to kill clergy members in the French Revolution, them saying, we have to do this because we're going to create the new world and the perfect world, and this is what virtue is. And then somebody saying, hey, you guys, your Republic of Virtue kills people and yada, yada. And then them saying, no, it doesn't. All we care about is equality. Are you saying you don't care about virtue? You saying you don't care about equality? That's what they're doing. It's a cynical game. The Neo-Marxism aspect comes into this. Because PC culture, what political correctness is this. You may not say that. Why? Because it's not politically correct. Because that's not the message that we need to get across. Does that make sense? That's not the message we need to get across. We don't like the way that makes certain kinds of people look. All right, maybe it's a woman. Maybe a woman went on a rampage and started killing a whole bunch of people. And the news outlets say, I don't think that we should cover that serial killer was a woman, because that might give people the impression that women are bad, and women as a social group are oppressed. This is where the Neo-Marxism comes in. Marxism in general is always breaking everybody up into oppressed and oppressors, right? Everything's about groups of people. You're either oppressed or you're an oppressor. Marxism is all about the economics. So it's about materialism. So the rich and the poor, basically, the business owners and the workers. Neo-Marxism takes the same principle of the groups. There are people who are oppressed and people who are oppressors. And so, by the way, if you own a business, it doesn't matter how much you pay your people. It doesn't matter how you treat your people. You may be paying them 10 times more than everybody else, all right? You may be giving all of your profits back to the workers. It doesn't matter. You own the business, which means you are an oppressor. It's not about your personal morality. It's not about your choices, all right? You're an oppressor, which means you're bad. All that Neo-Marxism does is it takes it out of the realm of economics and it puts it into all these other social group realms. Color, race, sex, gender, if you're tall or short, if you wear glasses or not, if you're skinny or obese, if you're whatever, two-parent privilege, white privilege, all this stuff. That's all it is. And it puts you into a group. So it's no longer about your personal choices. This is why if you're watching the news, if somebody goes on a serial rampage and it's a man, they'll say, a man went on a rampage and blah, 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 and killed folks. If it's a woman, they don't say that it's a woman that went on a rampage. They just say a person went on. They do the same thing with color. If it's a white person that shot a bunch of people, they say we had a gun shooting from a white man and blah, blah, blah. But if it's a non-white man, they don't mention the race at all. Why? Because it's not politically correct, because that gives the impression that women are bad, or that this colored skinned person is bad, or this colored person is bad. Then you go, well, then why is it okay to give the impression that men are bad? Because men are oppressors. But why is it okay to say that white people are bad? Because white people are oppressors. Because the rich are oppressors. Because Christians are oppressors. Because heterosexual culture, heteronormativity they call it, are oppressors. So that's why they don't say that on the news. So that's what political correctness is. You are not allowed to say that because it could hurt somebody's feelings. Now we're getting into PC culture ramped up to an incredible degree from all these hierarchies. That's what she means. So if you want to know what wokeness is, it is all about being awake to discrimination, but totally through this worldview lens, not in a discrimination in a sort of individual liberties, like, or even civil rights, not like 1968. We're not talking about discrimination 1968 style, where everybody has individual rights and we should all be treated equally under the law. This isn't about being treated equally under the law. This is about equity. And this is a word you can remember when people start talking about wokeness. They say, what is woke? And all of a sudden you can't remember. You remember Cooper stuff told you. What does being woke means? It means the equity, the search for equity. That's what it means. Now, what does equity mean? It does not mean equality under the law. It doesn't mean everybody gets treated the same as an individual. It doesn't mean that everybody has an equal chance to try to make it. That's not what equity means, excuse me. Equity means we all in the same place. You have to think socialistically. You have to think collectivism, communism, that kind of thing. Everybody ends in the same place. And if you have to do something immoral, all right, break into someone's individual liberties in order to get to equity, well, that's okay. Because equity is what is moral. You got to remember, just like our conversation about what is virtuous from the French Revolution, what does virtue mean? Is there a standard of virtuous behavior? Or is the end, meaning where you want to go, to my ends and means, is the end goal so virtuous that anything you have to do to get to there then is the pursuit of virtue? Or do we have a standard for the way that we are supposed to act in this and the other? Christians believe we have an eternal standard, the law of God. You don't do that. You don't say, we got to reach equity, and those people don't have any money, and those people do, so we're going to go and steal from some people, take your money away from you, take your land away from you, and give it to other people against your will. Well, now you're stealing in order to do that. You don't go in and start murdering all the people who own the land in the name of virtue. Well, that is what's happening. That's what equity is. I'm not just making this up. Equity, that is basically the definition that Ibram Kendi gives us. Ibram Kendi is the author of How to Be an Anti-Racist. He was one of Time magazine's 100 most influential people in the world in 2020 because of all the race stuff that was happening. He's one of the most famous people in America. That's his definition. He is saying basically we need to reach equity, which means that groups of people end in the same. It's not about, yeah, sure, like all right, so let's say that my family is at so-and-so level of income, and let's say that I have people in my own city that are not white. They're at the same level of income as me. Let's just say we're the exact same level of income, but that doesn't mean that there's equity, because equity is about social groups. It's not about individuals. So when they talk about being woke, you have to remember this is not about individuals. They are already thinking in a neo-Marxist framework, which is all about groups, okay? That's what they mean by equity. And so Ibram Kendi says, yeah, we have to have basically, we had past discrimination that has led to these disparities between groups of people. White people, black people, brown people, Asian people, indigenous people. There's all these different things, and we don't have equity between all the groups, which means it can only be because of racism. So this is nearly a word-for-word quote from Ibram Kendi. Past discrimination can only be remedied by present discrimination, and present discrimination can only be remedied by future discrimination. That is nearly a word-for-word quote. What he means is that in the past we had discrimination that led to different outcomes between groups now. How are we going to fix that? Well, we need to have discrimination now. In other words, the people that are making too much money, we need to treat them not equally under the law. In fact, we need to treat them worse in order to bring them down so that we may bring others up into equity. And in the future, it's going to be the same. That's his definition of it. That is being woke. Now they say, well, no, it's just about discrimination. Yes, it's about discrimination within your particular worldview. Now that you understand what I'm talking about being woke, I'm going to read a whole bunch of other people's sort of like definitions, okay? Before I read this article, I want to read you one that I included in my book because I think it's kind of funny. Do you mind if I read you something from my book? I think this is the first time I've done this. This is from my book. The woke are obsessively overtaken by an exercise of power between social groups. Everything is put under the microscope for dissection, from the ways that causal conversations use language as a tool of oppression to why every person's sexual proclivity must be expressed and celebrated by society in order to validate their authenticity. That's sort of like the hockey players having to wear the pride things. Listen to this. In the book Cynical Theories, Helen Pluckrose and James Lindsay describe wokeism. This is their definition. It's a belief that it alone, they're talking about the social justice movement, that it alone has awakened to the nature of societal injustice. This causes the woke to interpret the world through a lens that detects power dynamics in every interaction, utterance, and cultural artifact, even when they aren't obvious or real. I want you to remember that quote because when I read some of the things in a little while from the opposition side, you're going to see this come true. That everything is racism, everything is power dynamics, even when it's not obvious or real. I want you to remember that. I want to give you one that I think is funny from the Babylon Bee. The Babylon Bee defines woke as waking up to the cause. What cause? Every far left, radical, communist, Marxist cause we can think of. The entire agenda of the left. Once you see the world through woke eyes, you'll never be able to stop telling your friends about your new beliefs. Is it kind of like when you join CrossFit or become a vegan? I think that's kind of clever. They nailed it. That's exactly what being woke is. Now, the opposition might say, that's not fair, that's not whatever. I'm going to read some things and you tell me if you think it's fair. Let's go back. I want to read you this article. This is in zora.medium.com. This is from somebody called Whitney Elise. The title, She Couldn't Define Woke, Yet She Claims It's Destroying America. Newsweek rewarded her with an entire op-ed. Now, this is about the woman I told you earlier. Bethany Mandel sputtered and stalled when asked by a journalist, Brianna Joy Gray, to define what the word woke meant. Mandel, in a viral clip, seemed to struggle to define the word. A word she claims is destroying America. She couldn't even define. Mandel eventually sputtered some form of definition on the Hill's YouTube show Rising that was completely antithetical to the colloquialism, woke's actual origins and meaning. Now, this is what I want you to hear. What this author is saying is that she doesn't even know what woke means. She can't define it. Then she comes on and gives a definition that's the opposite of what woke originally meant. That's what she says when she says colloquialism, all right? So she's saying that's not even what it really even originally meant. So now they're going to tell us what it really meant. This author is upset because Mandel recently had the opportunity to explain her side in a Newsweek article. When addressing the interview and her struggle to answer Gray's question, Mandel says, "It was a fair question." And yes, Cooper Stuff agrees. After all, it's the centerpiece of my book's premise. It was. But by that point, the panic attack had arrived and I was rendered speechless. Eventually, I sputtered out what I thought was a decent definition of the word, but it was too late. And then going back to the article, this woman says, it was indeed too late. Mandel, a vocal conservative, being unable to succinctly define the word that she alleges is, quote, indoctrinating a generation, was the confirmation of what many believe. They cannot define woke or critical race theory or any of the terms they use to create fear and panic because many of them do not know what those terms are. They were just told they needed to fear them. This is where the cynical game is coming in. Nobody even knows what these terms mean. Yes, we do know what they mean. All right, let's keep going. While Gray was defending the interview, Mandel was attacking her. Rather than take personal accountability for her flip-flop, Mandel blamed the show's host. Mandel says, quote, Brianna Joy Gray was on a hot mic. I heard her demeaning parenting in general in colorful and nasty terms. All right, so what they're saying is this. When you go on to do an interview like this, you have an earpiece on, and they say, we're going to come to you in 60 seconds, and then you can hear what's either happening on the show or backstage. It's really unnerving, I'm not going to lie. Apparently, according to Mandel, I don't know if this is true, according to Mandel, what happened was, in her earpiece, she could hear one of the hosts demeaning parenting. Something to the nature of, the only reason people have kids is because they're narcissists anyway. They have all these kids. They don't need all these narcissists. Mandel, the person writing this, has 6 children of her own. Again, I have no way to prove this. I'm only telling you what I've heard her say herself, okay? So Mandel's feeling is that, okay, we're living in a time where the progressives do not like people with big families, as you all know. They believe the world's dying from being overpopulated and climate issues and yada, yada. They don't like that. They do not like parents who get involved at the school boards. They don't think that you parents have anything to do with what your kids learn. They want the state to do that. They actually think that they themselves, the progressives, are better at that than the parents. They don't like that. And so what she can hear in her ear is, oh God, yeah, they have all these kids because they're a bunch of narcissists. And so Mandel started getting nervous going, oh my gosh, we're not even going to talk about my new book. They're just going to come after me for having too many kids. And she starts going, what am I going to say about that? Because I wasn't prepared to talk about that. Now I got to have an answer for why I don't think that. I'm not trying to defend her. She blew it. I'm just going to be honest with you. No hate. She blew it. This is what your book is about. You got to have the answers. But I do know what that's like. So she's trying to explain herself. And so what she says is, I heard these people demeaning parenting. Now we're back to the article I'm reading. She doubled down in her news piece saying, right before we went on air, I heard one of the hosts speaking about parents in what I perceived to be a negative way. I panicked. Over my career as a loud and proud breeder, I have often been attacked by the left and I braced myself to be ambushed on air about my own life choices. Mandel said in her tweets that this was not an excuse, but to anyone reading, it was not only an excuse, but a pointed attack at Gray. Rather than focus on the conversation, the premise that her book hinges on, she blamed Gray for her alleged hot mic comments throwing off. Okay, we're almost done with this article. One would think that if you wrote a book claiming that wokeness is upending childhood and indoctrinating a generation, you would be able to clearly articulate those bold claims. This is the key. One second. Here's the key. Mandel not only couldn't do that, but she also blamed the black woman who asked her a very simple question during the interview. This is what I want to read. Do you see what just happened in this article? They're saying that we have no idea what wokeness is and we're lying about it. We're making it up. See, I agree with this author that Mandel should have had an answer ready. I also agree that she shouldn't be blaming her for whatever she said, whatever. Do we need to know that she blamed a, quote, black woman? Do you see? This person saying that we don't know what woke is, as she's showing us what woke is. It looks first and foremost through a lens of power and oppression. This is no longer about, she could have just said, rather than focus on the conversation this hinges upon, she blamed the host. She can't just say that. She could just say she blamed the woman who asked it. Can't just say that. She's got to say she blamed the black woman. What she means is this. Black women are already oppressed in this country. We're already treated terribly. We're already the oppressed. And this other woman, Mandel, who's a white woman, is already an oppressor. And so what does she think she do? She thinks she has the privilege to blame the black woman when the color of this person's skin has absolutely nothing to do with this. This is what that definition meant earlier when I read to you, and they say it blames everything on power dynamics, even when there's no proof of that is what's going on. I thought that was super interesting. Let's do this. I want to show you this. Let's just go to Merriam-Webster, okay? Woke. Aware of and actively attentive to important societal facts and issues, especially issues of racial and social justice. How does that sound? I agree with that. That's what the woke people say. Now, let's go back to this article because I think they're going to get into the... I want you to remember that. That's what they say. It's just being aware of issues. Go back to the article I was reading. Woke as a colloquialism has been used in the black community for almost a century. Stay woke as a phrase is earliest recorded in the 1938 song Scottsboro Boys, a song of protest by blues musician Hootie Ledbetter, better known as Lead Belly. It's a term used in the black culture to remind each other to, quote, be aware, stay alert, or to pay attention to what is going on around us socially and politically. And the meaning of the colloquialism within the culture has not changed for almost a century, she says. Is that true? Is that true? All right, now let's look at some other things. I'm going to come back to this. This is the cynical game. I'm not going to read the other one now. I'm just going to give it to you now. No, I can't. I have to. All right, I'm sorry. Let me go back to one more. Hold on. Okay, I'm going to get that, I promise. But I need you to listen. This is ABC News. What does woke mean, and why are some conservatives using it? This is a big thing right now. Now, you're going to see what happens here. First, they say, the definition of woke changes depending on who you ask. The term has recently been used by some conservatives as an insult against progressive values. The term, however, was originally coined by progressive black Americans in the early 1900s. So now they're going back to the same well. To be woke, politically in the black community, just means that someone is informed, educated, and conscious of societal issues and racial inequality. Merriam-Webster Dictionary says. So then they go to the Webster Dictionary. It just started because people want to be what? Okay? Agreed. That's totally agreed. Love it. Good. Then they say the term in one of its contemporary meanings, now listen to this, they just admit it, in one of its contemporary meanings, began to gain more popularity at the start of the Black Lives Matter movement in 2014, according to Merriam Dictionary. The Ferguson, Missouri protests that year helped wake many people up to the societal injustice of police brutality and blah, blah, blah. So then they start going into, here, LGBTQ rights. So here they say all it ever meant was just being aware of societal discrimination. That's what it means. Well, what happened in 2014? You guys, this is so important. I'm getting off of my script because I wanted to read a little bit more. I've been talking for ages. This is the whole point. This is the same thing as the Republic of Virtue, which is also called the Reign of Terror. It's the same thing. All this is about is staying alert of societal issues. It's always been known that getting involved in discrimination. You really don't think that anything's changed from 1930 to 2020 to 2014, as it just said? That's when they started rebranding the woke movement. What else happened in 2014 and 2015 with the woke movement? Can you think of anything? Yes. Hyper LGBT rights. We had a woke president, President Obama, who we would not even know what transgenderism was if it wasn't for the first black president. I said it, it's true. We wouldn't even know what it was. So there is an entanglement with the modern secular social justice movement. I call it the critical social justice movement because critical ties it back to Neo-Marxism, critical theory, social groups. And this is what I have to say to my Christian friends who are all woke and they're like, no, it's all discrimination. It's power dynamics. They buy into it. I've said to so many of them, even Christian artists that I disagree with, I've said, how are you going to keep this within only the issue of race? You have to bring this into the issue of the patriarchy. You have to bring this into the issue of heterosexuals are oppressors against homosexuals, and that gender normativity or heteronormativity are oppressors against transgender. There's no way to not bring that into this if you're going to view the entire world through your woke paradigm. It's the same thing. So even in the article, this is the game they're playing. The first one's like, this has always been used for this, and they're stealing our term, and now they're using it as a bunch of racists. It's a racist dog whistle, one of the articles says. It's a racist dog whistle to try to ruin something that black people started. But the truth is that, yeah, but this has already changed. It started at BLM. What else has BLM fought for? Let me think. The destruction of the nuclear family. If you go to BLM, the BLM.com movement, as everybody surely knows, I realize not everybody that supported BLM supported the BLM.com. I get it. But the three Marxist women that saw it, two of which are, I can't remember if all three are LGBT members, but two of which are. Most of the movement was about trans rights. If you go and you look to find out where that $90 million that BLM raised, where'd that money go? Well, a majority of it went to transgender activism. So the idea that we don't know what woke is and we're lying about it, when the purveyors of the people that repopularized the term in 2014, as all the articles say, they're the ones that did it. The first black president did it, BLM did it, and now, do you think that is it any different than 1938? Is life any different? This is crazy. Do you think that the social justice activists of 1930 or 1950 or civil rights era, do you think they were fighting for different things than they're fighting for now? As the progressive administration of Biden is saying that it is close to sinful to not let 15-year-olds begin to enter into taking their breasts off so they can change their sex, or taking their hoo-haws off. Okay? Hoo-ha! You heard me. That's close to sinful. It's absolutely wrong. Do you think they're fighting for the same thing? We know what woke means. We're saying the same thing that you guys are playing. You guys are playing a cynical game. That's what they're doing. They're playing a cynical game. On one hand, they'll say, oh yeah, this is what it's about. But all it is about discrimination. But they're the ones fighting for this. If you went to the author who wrote the article I just read you and said to them, okay, you think that we're given a definition that's antithetical what you believe, because all it is about being politically engaged. If we said to them, do you think then that hate speech isn't free speech? Do you think that we shouldn't be flying transgender flags in Uganda at the U.S. Embassy? Do you think the hockey team should be forced to wear pride uniforms? Do you think that 14-year-olds should be able to enter into surgeries to change their bodies so that they can try to go from being a boy into a girl? If you ask them all those things, they would be on board with every single one of them, because it's the progressive agenda. So at the end, you'd be like, so I do know what woke means, and you are saying that it's the same thing. Let's see what we got here. Let's read a little bit more. So this article just keeps talking about, basically, DeSantis down in Florida keeps saying that we reject woke ideology. And now let's see what ABC News has to say. Identity has been at the heart of the so-called culture wars being seen across the country as Democrats and Republicans go head-to-head on such issues such as LGBTQ rights, racial education in schools, and more. For example, DeSantis himself has implemented policies in schools that have been criticized for limiting discussions and curriculum on race, systemic oppression, gender, and sexual orientation with the parental rights and education law and blah, 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 blah. This is the amazing thing. They're saying the quiet part out loud. So the same people that say we don't know what critical race theory is, it's not being taught in schools, DeSantis is saying, is that, yeah, we're not going to teach it in schools. Then they come in and say, oh, they don't want to talk about slavery in school. They're playing a cynical game. We know what being woke is. And they say, all we want to do is teach history. Yes, you want to teach history under your worldview of critical theory, which teaches, let me give you an idea of one of the tenets of critical race theory. One of the tenets of critical race theory is called convergence theory. What that means is that white people never do anything to advance liberties, outcomes, anything to do with the human condition for people who are non-white. White people will never, ever, ever do anything to help non-white people out because we benefit from the system. The only time that white people will help is when our agenda converges, that's what they call convergence theory, converges with non-white people. In other words, the only time I'm going to help you is if it helps me. So yeah, okay, sure, they fought for civil rights, but that wasn't really because they believed that blacks deserved civil rights. It wasn't really because whites were upset about it. They thought it was unfair. None of that was. It was only because public perception was causing white people to not make as much money, but they have all these different things that they say. It's convergence theory. So we said, okay, we'll give them civil rights only because it's going to help us. That's why you start hearing people say now that President Lincoln didn't even free the slaves. It wasn't President Lincoln. Blacks freed themselves. That's one of the things you hear in education all the time now. Now you have to start putting people in groups. And so a lot of these schools were going through things to explain why white people are born into privileges that non-white people aren't. Now you're in the framework of critical race theory. I'm not saying it's actually critical legal studies, but it is basically critical race theory light. It is a Marxist way of viewing the world. And they're saying, yeah, we don't really want to do that. And these people are saying, they just don't even want to teach history anymore. That's because they're just racist. This is the cynical game they're playing. And they even say here, Maurice Mitchell, the national director of the Working Families Party and the social movement strategist within Movement for Black Lives, calls conservative use of woke a dog whistle. Because woke is associated with black people, it's been a useful club for those who want to beat those seeking justice over the head with white grievance politics to win elections without deploying explicitly racist terms, Mitchell said. So what he means is they're racist. They don't like non-white people. They specifically don't like black people. They can't just come out and say, we really don't like black people. So we say they're woke. because we don't like these black ideas. That's what they're basically saying. But here's where it's so cynical. You can't have it both ways. You can't say that these ideas that we don't like PC culture, gone so extreme that I can't go on Twitter and say that a man cannot have a period or a man cannot get pregnant. I'll get yanked off of Twitter. I'll lose my job maybe. I might lose gigs. I might lose all sorts of stuff. That's rabid PC culture. That's not free speech. I don't like that idea. I don't consider that to be a, quote, black idea. I don't think that is being anything to do with black people at all. They want to have it both ways because guess what? If I did go on, which I don't believe this, I don't believe it, but let's say I went on and said all these people fighting against free speech, these are a bunch of black ideas. I hate this black ideology. They would freak out and say that I was being racist. I would never say that because I also don't think it's true. I just don't think it's a true thing. And I wouldn't say it. Don't believe it. But if I did say it, they'd call me a racist. But when I say I'm against their ideologies, they say, hey, those came from us. Those are black ideas. Which one is it going to be? I mean, hey, it was the first black president that got us involved in all of this nonsense. That is true. It was the BLM movement that got us involved in a whole lot of nonsense. It's the reason that if you didn't say hands up, don't shoot, which was a lie, by the way, is still said today. If you care about justice, you got to say it. Hands up, don't shoot. Say it. It was a lie. It never happened. It never happened. You're repeating a lie and then calling it justice. I don't think that's what the law of God says to my woke brothers and sisters, my Christian woke brothers and sisters. I do love you. That's not what the law of God says. You're lying. You can't have justice when you're lying about something. It did a lot of stuff, tons of stuff like that. It's the reason that BLM burning my city down is not looked at as a bad thing. Why? Because they're going for justice. It's justice within groups. It's Marxist style justice. It's politically correct to burn the city down. You see, it's not politically correct. It is seen as anti-justice for me to say, hey guys, can you stop burning my city down? Don't love it. Hey, and if you don't mind, would you not burn down my house? I don't have anything to do with this. That is seen as a racist dog whistle to a lot of these folks. So which one is it? They're playing a cynical game. We actually know what woke is. You just said it. Another one of these things that I read even said, this is really amazing. They even said that this racist dog whistle has a long history of hating, quote, black words. And so this author is saying that black words like intersectionality. And so because black people made up these words, we fight against these words because we're racist. It's just so insane. This is what, going back to cynical theories, the definition I told you to remember, everything, what is the definition I said? This causes the woke to interpret the world through a lens that detects power dynamics in every interaction, utterance, and cultural artifact, even when they aren't real, okay? Even when it's not even like a thing that happened. That's what they have to do. I don't like intersectionality. I didn't even know a couple of years ago. It was invented by a black person. I don't care what color it is. I'm arguing about the ideology. But they have to see the world through their woke, yes, it's a woke, politically correct, neo-Marxist lens. Everything is about race. Everything is about color. Everything is about sex, gender. It's all about power dynamics. Everything is about how tall you are. Were you from a two-parent privilege? Were you from whatever it may be, able-bodied privilege? Everything has to be. So if I say I don't like intersectionality, they go, oh, yeah, it was made up by a black woman. Of course you don't. It's got nothing to do with it. It's completely ridiculous. It's a terrible way to see the world. Now, I want to read you one more article that I thought was actually super good. All right, got one more article to read, I promise, and then I'll be done. This is from the New York Times, believe it or not, from Russell Douthat. I never know how to pronounce that name. I actually thought this was good. This week, the conservative writer Bethany Mandel, who I talked about earlier, had the kind of moment that can happen to anyone who talks in public for a living. While promoting a new book critiquing progressivism, she was asked to define the term woke by an interviewer, a reasonable question, and she stumbled, blah, 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 blah. You guys know that part. Is there any universally accepted label for what it's trying to describe? The answers are yes, sometimes, and unfortunately no. True. We've already said that, right? Okay. But there is something real to be described. The revolution inside American liberalism is a crucial ideological transformation of our time. Absolutely true. Remember earlier I said, it's easy to describe what woke is. What's hard is understanding the world. That's what he's saying. He's saying there is a, what does he call it? Revolutionary, an ideological transformation for our, I call it a revolution. An ideological transformation that's happening. That side just uses it in completely different ways because they see the world completely different, all right? Agree. All right. He says, I won't read that. That doesn't really matter. He says, let me try an exercise. Instead of a pithy term or definition, let me write a sketch of the woke worldview, elaborating its internal logic as I myself believed in it. And then he says, to the incautious reader, these are not my actual beliefs. So what he's saying is, I don't believe this, but I'm going to tell you what I think the woke worldview is. Are you ready for this? This is pretty good. What is America all about at its best? Equality and liberty. What is the left all about at its best? Transforming those ideals into lived realities. But this project keeps running into limits, disappointments, and defeats. Can I just interject? What he's trying to say is what I was trying to say about equity. In other words, what is America all about? We are all about equality and liberty. You have the liberty to have self-governance over your life, to be treated no less and no more than any other citizen. You have God-given rights, and you get to pursue that and to thrive and this and the other. Well, what does the left believe in? They want to make your best life a lived reality. They do not believe in any constraints on man to create equity, a perfect world. So they think, well, we can do this. We can engineer equity. That's what they're trying to say. This project keeps running into limits, disappointments, and defeats. True. That's what he means by limits. Our human condition is limited. You can't make life perfect. Everywhere you look, terrible disparities persist. And that persistence should force us to look deeper beyond attempts to win legal rights or redistribute wealth to the cultural and psychological structures that perpetuate oppression before law and policy begin to play a part. Totally, this is a great article. This is what the terminology of the academy has long been trying to describe. The way that generations of racist, homophobic, sexist, and heteronormative power have inscribed themselves not just on our laws, but our very psyches. So what they're saying is that the laws that we serve are nothing more than a result of the things we have imprinted upon us. Well, what imprints us upon us? What is good and bad? And this is Western civilization, Christianity, the American project, individual liberties, all these things, Christian morality mainly, have imprinted upon our minds what is good. And because of that, we made laws to say, well, that's what's good because that's what we really like. And those very laws are hurting a whole bunch of kind of people. That's what it's saying. And once you see these forces in operation, you can't unsee them. You are well awake, and you can't accept any analysis that doesn't acknowledge how they permeate our lives. That's it. Totally true. This means rejecting first any argument about group differences that emphasizes any force besides racism or sexism or other systems of oppression. What he means is exactly right. If somebody says, well, how come these families aren't doing as good as these families? Conservatives and Christians say, well, I think that your personal decisions have something to do with it. Are there fathers in the home? Are you being educated? Are you disciplining your children? We have all these sorts of things. The left and the progressives say that's a racist thing to say. That's a bigoted thing to say. That's a judgmental thing to say. We can't even get to these issues of personal responsibility because the system is at fault. We have to fix the system. Okay? That's what he's trying to say. And then he goes on, he says, indeed, the very measurement of difference through standardized testing, say, is itself inevitably shaped by these oppressive forces. Certainly you've seen that. We're lowering ACT scores and SAT scores. We're lowering them because the truth is that Asians do the best, whites do second best, and then brown people, and then black people. And saying is, these Asians and white people are doing too much better. That's not good. So in order to bring equity, we're not going to focus on teaching people at the bottom more. We're not going to focus on giving them better schooling and more teaching and more discipline and this and the other. That's not what we're going to do. Instead, we're going to lower the top. We're not bringing the bottom up. We're bringing the people that do too good down. All right, that's what they're saying. Even differences that seem most obviously biological, like the differences between male and female athletes or the bodies that people find sexually attractive, should be presumed to be primarily culturally inscribed. This is why Victoria's Secret no longer looks the way it did a couple of years ago. And now, like you saw all this stuff about Victoria's Secret now, and some ads, they even have men. They have men who say they're women in women's underwear and stuff like that, because they're saying, well, who's to say what's attractive? What's a beauty standard? Those are all bad things. And so now we're going to make sure that everybody, this is like rabid PC culture. It's not politically correct to not have a man in lingerie, so we're going to do that too. Or an obese person in lingerie, or a short person, yada, yada. Okay, let's get down to this. How can we know what's really biological until we finish liberating people from the crushing constraints of gender stereotypes? Perfectly said. It also means rejecting or modifying the rules of liberal proceduralism, because under conditions of deep oppression, those supposed liberties are inherently oppressive themselves. I'll explain that. Listen, you can't have an effective principle of non-discrimination unless you first discriminate in favor of the oppressed. You can't have real freedom of speech unless you first silence some oppressors. This is what I was talking about earlier. You can't have equity unless you discriminate. Remember, I gave you the Ibram Kendi definition. If we're going to have equity, then we have to discriminate against some people. And the truth is that white men, their voices are too loud in this country, so we need to discriminate against them. It's the reason that Me Too exists. It's the reason that the Brett Kavanaugh trial went the way it did. Believe all women. Why do we believe women? Because too many men are in power and too many men are oppressors. Women as a group are oppressed. It doesn't matter what the particular morality or immorality or circumstances of Blasey Ford, I can't remember her first name, of the woman who says that he sexually assaulted her. It doesn't matter. She said it. Women are oppressed. Men are oppressors. And the only way to bring equity is to discriminate against Brett Kavanaugh's individual liberties now in order to bring equity. You see, that's what he's trying to say. And all of this is necessarily a cultural and psychological project, which is why schools, media, pop culture, and language itself are the essential backgrounds. Yes, economic policy matters, but material arrangements are downstream of culture and psychology. The socialists have merely gentled capitalism. The environmentalists have merely regulated it. If you want to save the planet or end the rule of greed, you need a different kind of human being, not just a system that assumes racist patriarchal values and tries to put them on a leash. You think this is too utopian? Consider a proof of concept, what we've already seen with gay rights. There, the left overthrew a system of deep heteronormative oppression by establishing a new cultural consensus in the academy and in pop culture, and only at the end in politics and law, using argument but also shaming, social pressure, and other illiberal means. And look at what we've learned. Once homophobia diminishes, millions upon millions of young people begin to define themselves as what they truly are, as some form of LGBTQ+, slipping the shackles of heteronormativity at last, which is why the backlash against the spread of transgender identification among kids must be defeated, because this is the beachhead, the proving ground for full emancipation. And then he says this, listen, it's so good. If you find a lot of this narrative persuasive, even filtered through my conservative mind, he says, then whatever woke describes, it probably describes you. If you recoil from it, then welcome to the ranks of the unwoke. That's a great article. That's pretty much what it is. Now listen, am I saying, this is, when I say there's a cynical game happening with the progressives on this woke thing, they try, you don't even know what it is. They say, Cooper stuff, you say woke, you don't even know what it means. You're describing it wrong. You're putting all these other things in it that aren't even true, and it might even be a racist dog whistle. Here's how you fight back with these people. A, they're lying. Am I saying that every one of them is lying? No, because some of them might not know what they're talking about. They might not know this. Here's what you have to understand. For them to say, woke has been a long tradition in black activism for 100, and it hasn't changed. That's what that first article said. That's a lie. That's a lie. We see this article just describes it perfectly. And if they say that's a lie, then you have to say, okay, so the people that you are fighting alongside, Ibram Kendi, Robin DiAngelo wrote White Fragility, the Biden administration, and all of the LGBTQ plus people that are on board with that, BLM.com, go down the list, are all of them fighting for the things we've just talked about. Transgender rights, the limiting of some people's freedoms to say certain things. Men can get pregnant, or this, that, the other. Hate speech isn't free speech. Do we need speech codes at campus? Should somebody get fired if they break one of your speech codes? Blah, blah. They're probably going to say yes. They're probably on board with all of that stuff, which means they're playing a cynical game. That is not what woke meant in 1938, 1948, 58, 68. That's not what woke meant. This was supercharged in the 2010s with critical social justice as it tied together all sorts of social justice movements into the civil rights activism from the 60s. It said, hey, the issue of race worked. Now we got to tie the issue of race into the issues of sexuality. We're going to tie it into gender. We're going to tie it into a revolution against capitalism, a revolution against Americanism, and blah, 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 blah. And that's what we mean when we say woke. What we mean is you have taken on a completely different worldview that has redefined everything. It has redefined what is moral, what is immoral. It has redefined what is virtuous, what is not virtuous, and they are playing a game. Don't you fall for it. We actually know what woke means. And guess what? When they say, oh, so you don't care about discrimination, we say we care about discrimination as it pertains to the law of God. Everyone should be treated equally under the law. Why? Because the Bible says that the Lord abhors, he hates unequal weights and measures. If you're treating this person worse than that person, he hates it. It's wickedness. Excuse me. I'm losing my voice. I'm ending tour. He hates it. And so what you fight back and you say, no, no, no. The woke movement applies unequal weights and measures. The law of God hates unequal weights and measures. That's what true justice is. The woke movement uses unequal weights and measurements against the individual in order to engineer group outcomes. That is wicked. Absolutely wicked. Because I cannot be responsible for what other people in my quote unquote social group do. I can't be responsible for what they do. So Ibram Kendi is saying past discrimination is only remedied by present discrimination. Present discrimination is only remedied by future discrimination. That is absolutely against the law of God. What he's saying is we have to get to equity, and if it's changing, then we got to discriminate against the other people. They have too much stuff. They've been treated too well under the law. The law serves them keeping in power, and we see everything through power dynamics and groups, and that can't be. The woke movement does not see you as an individual. This is how you fight back. They don't believe in individual liberties. You have to understand. They hate individual liberties, which is why if you press down hard enough, a lot of the woke people don't even really love the civil rights movement. Not all, but a lot of them don't even. They like civil rights because it's a stepping stone to a better world. Not where everybody is treated equal, but where groups have equal outcomes. But they're not into individual liberties. They do not like the Constitution. They do not like this idea. And that's how you fight back. The individual doesn't matter. That is why my Christian friends, are you listening? Are you listening up in here? My Christian friends were mad at me when I was upset that BLM people were threatening to burn my house down. My Christian friends who claim to love me are mad because, hey, if your house has to get burned down for the good of social group equity, then that's just the way it's got to be. That's against the law of God. So I will tell you what, when people start saying you don't know what woke is, you just don't care about discrimination, I want you to be confident that you have the high ground here. We do know what woke is. You believed it then. You're the one that said it then. That's what I would say to my fellow Christian artists in 2014 who were all going, we're the ones that are woke. Stay woke. We love justice, the justice of the kingdom, and blah, blah, blah. They're saying the same things now in a different way. And they're like, we're not even woke. Nobody even uses that term. We know what you meant. I love you. We know what you meant. You still mean it today. I think what you meant is worthy of speaking out against. I think it's against the law of God. I think it's a way to tear down society, not to build up society. And I'll end with this, and this is how you know it's Neo-Marxism. That's all Marxism does. It thrives on conflict. That's its whole thing. Progress through conflict. It's the dialectic. That's why everything that they say is at odds with the other things they say. They're all go like this, right? Just like somebody saying, you can't say that this woke movement, you can't blame all these things on, black ideology and black philosophy. You can't do that. That's racist. By the way, I don't do that. Wouldn't do that because I don't think it's true. They say you can't do it. But then as soon as you speak against the ideology, you say, all you're doing is speaking against black people because those are our ideas. Which one is it? Sounds a little conflictual. This is what progressives do. And it's not, and I'm not beating up on black progressives. Tons of this stuff came from white elites in colleges, white Marxists, who pushed and pushed and pushed and pushed. You know it's Marxist because all it does is thrive through conflict. It loves it. That's what it does. It takes something, takes its opposite, and it says, we're going to fight and fight until we have a revolution, and it's going to be amazing. Newsflash, spoiler alert, it ain't going to be amazing. It's going to be destruction. All it can do is destroy. Wokeness is easy to define. All you got to do is watch Cooper stuff. Have a good week.
Read the Bible.
Cooper stuff!